Brooklyn Independent Television.
How to Succeed in Business is once again a Broadway hit, 50 years after it first opened. Back in 1961, a big musical set in a big New York City office building could have only taken place in Manhattan. But times in Brooklyn have changed. In the past few years, we've seen a huge increase in office space. And here to tell us about the state of commercial real estate is someone who's been right in the thick of it. Chris Havens, Chief Executive of Creative Real Estate Group. Chris, thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me, Randy. Appreciate it.
Now, Chris, I've had the pleasure of knowing you for at least 10 years. You've had a long, distinguished career in real estate. You've sometimes stayed behind the scenes. Tell us a little bit about what's going on in the borough and specifically what you've been working on.
Well, I think the thing to think about right now is all the markets have turned. Retail is booming. There's more large tenants in Brooklyn looking for space and can fit in. Look at ShopRite and Walmart competing. And that's happening in downtown Brooklyn and elsewhere. Residential has turned. All the people paying close attention know there'll be a shortage of condos in Brooklyn next year. It's hard to believe, but there will. Rentals are white hot. Dumbo, our Tribeca Soho, is sold out. There's almost no space left at the moment. There's not much prospect of that changing.
Well, let's focus a little bit on Dumbo because you've done a lot of work in Dumbo in your career.
Yeah.
And it's really been held up as an amazing success story for the borough.
Yeah.
So what was the Dumbo formula?
The Dumbo formula was offering affordable spaces starting as low as rent as feasible and then moving them up over time. It was also providing move-in condition space. The average tenant in northern Brooklyn is probably 1,000 to 2,000 feet range. Nobody's really sure. Those tenants have 4-week to 10-week time horizons. They need to see space they can move into, and all they got to do is light it up. And what Two Trees Management did, and then the Gutman family did, is provide nearly move-in condition space and small spaces. Also, by creating a residential environment and a retail environment, for these people, they created a whole new neighborhood. There are about 150 leases have been signed in 15 months in that area. That has happened in no other outer borough in the history of New York.
So what are the types of businesses that are moving into the commercial space?
Well, it's 70–80% creative, though you do have 3 of the biggest law firm installations in Brooklyn and Dumbo. But it's generally business services, which is a good sign for all of us that they're booming. Graphic design, multimedia, about 30 architectural practices down there and growing. You're also getting fancier tenants. The Knot, the biggest wedding website in America, has backup space there. Etsy, who's been on the show, is there. West Elm's world headquarters is in 45 Main. So it's essentially the same kind of tenants as 10 years ago, but just higher up the food chain.
And is Dumbo still considered the affordable alternative?
It's also less expensive than Court and Montague, which are the alternative. Though creative tenants are looking there too. Bruce Springsteen's publicist is in 32 Court. Michael Van Valkenburg Architects is in the building I'm working on, 16 Court. S.L. Green, is now the best B building in the boroughs. And so you're seeing those tenants come downtown too. It's hard to find the space. The other thing is the Valentis family in Dumbo created great values. It's beautiful space. They're helpful to their tenants if their tenants cooperate and pay rent. They grow them, they shrink them. The people doing the JetBlue website were small, got big, crashed, came back again.
Yeah.
And so it's a flexible environment there. And the people that are taking those spaces, the people signing leases are 27, 37 years old, and they are not conventional tenants.
So you had mentioned B office space. That would be Class B office space, right?
Yeah.
So what? Let's talk a little bit about that. What distinguishes Class B from Class A, and what types
Class
of?
A is size and services, and generally post 1980, generally large like Metrotech, One Pierpont Plaza. And you could call 16 Court an A because of the level of service, but generally Court and Montague are older buildings with certain level of service, and that's what people want. It's what the lawyers want, the government wants, and the location is the single best in Brooklyn, Court and Montague, because of the subway trains there and the services. There's 75 food vendors within walking distance of Court and Montague. It's the most service-rich area in the boroughs for an office tenant is downtown Brooklyn. It's also the third highest concentration of law enforcement in the East Coast after the White House and Police Plaza. In that area, it's a very, very safe precinct, second safest to Bay Ridge. So it's a very good place for business to locate. Dumbo's in the same precinct. But that's just for now. If you want to think about the future is an area you know better than anybody, and that's the Sunset Park waterfront. From Hamilton Avenue in the teens down to the Army Terminal in the 60s, 50s, is protected from condos. Between the water and the Gowanus is the biggest collection of warehouse space that's available in the boroughs and is the future for small tenants. Dumbo, you're going to lose some buildings to residential. The condo shortage will wipe out a lot of commercial space in northern Brooklyn, by which I mean Bushwick, East Williamsburg, Williamsburg, Greenpoint. And the new law for freezing live-work people in place, the loft law that extended to Brooklyn, has taken 30 to 50 buildings out of service. It's also killing the live-work market because people aren't going to move if they're rent stabilized. So the market up there over the next 2 years, a lot of commercial tenants are going to be pushed to Long Island City and further south in Brooklyn. And there is nowhere else to go. East New York, Borough Park, or tend to be 1-2 stories. Borough Park is sold out. JFK is the tightest industrial market in America. You know, you're really going to see a rush of businesses to Gowanus, which is actually very tight right now for small tenants, and to the Sunset Park waterfront. And the city's, you know, putting money in for the park, and it's also a beautiful neighborhood to live in, Greenwood Heights.
So then what are some of the challenges, though, in terms of rehabbing those buildings to accommodate
The
those
challenge
types of
is
things?
you don't make any money on it because the rents are really 12 to 14 bucks a foot. That's break even after you renovate. So that's the challenge. And the only reason this could be done because they bought the buildings in the early 80s like David Valentis did and Dumbo. So you can't go in and buy a building for $150 a foot and do this. It's impossible. The numbers don't work. So long-term owners are the ones that can do it. Then the city of New York is a big owner, and they have beautiful stuff at the Army Terminal, and they're working on the Bush Terminal section to make that better. So I think what the challenge of doing it is making the numbers work, attracting the tenants, and also bringing amenities there. Dumbo was amenity challenged 10 years ago, and it isn't so much now. So bringing the food services, the coffee, things like that there, that's the challenge, is making it better and making people perceive it.
Yeah, I would agree with you that both infrastructure and the amenities
Yeah.
are two challenges there. You know, and the Dumbo formula was always to look at sort of mixed use.
Right.
So we do have that challenge as
Housing
well.
does help. It does help bring people there if you can live and work. But I just tell people, look, go look at the housing in Greenwood Heights and in Sunset Park. And it's beautiful housing. It's affordable. It's the biggest Mexican community in New York City. It's a fabulous area to work and live. It's very safe. There's great food. And you see actually some of the larger, more interesting tenants. You know, Paul Chan, the artist, lives in the 40s. The free cell people, John, one of the principal, lives in the 40s. And also Bay Ridge people are very attracted by it because that way they don't have to travel as far. So I think you're going to see, as you see the further gentrification and the rise of prices in Park Slope, they're pushing people further south. I think you'll see more creatives living there because creative tenants tend to want to be close to home. Dumbo is half female or female co-owned businesses. And these are childbearing, these are families that are there because they're 30s, 40s, and they don't want to be too far from home. And so the residential mix, but I think Sunset provides a fabulous residential opportunity.
And I think you're also sort of just affirming that Brooklyn has really become this creative economy center for New York City.
It's something that's not well known. If you look around the U.S., what are the 3 counties with the most creatives in them? It ain't Dade County in Miami. It ain't Cook in Chicago. Boston only has 600,000 people proper in it, believe it or not. San Francisco, 700. We have 2.5 million. Some people think we have surpassed New York County, the small island. We're on the big island here. And then, of course, LA County, depending on what you think of the movie business. But really, we are the 3 top creative counties. And Brooklyn is just full of everything from famous writers. I mean, Nora Jones just moved here, Martin Amis, one of my favorite novelists. But really, it's about the regular creative people, young people, doing software, paintings, doing multimedia.
And they need space.
And they need space.
And Chris Havens is here to provide that space.
We have space, and the landlords know this, and they see these tenants.
Well, that's very interesting, and we greatly appreciate you bringing these insights to the show.
Yeah.
Thank you, Chris.
You're welcome.
All right.
Watch this and other Brooklyn Independent Television episodes online at brickartsmedia.org/BIT.